Good afternoon and welcome to the SJP Law HR and Employment Update. My name is Alistair Latham and I'm a Director at Stamp Jackson and Proctor, SJP Law, and Head of the Commercial, Corporate and Employment team. Today, Becca Garland, our HR expert, will be looking at some of the more common questions we've been asked by clients over the past few weeks. We hope these questions and the answers are of some use to you. If you have any questions you'd like to ask us throughout the webinar, then please do so. You can do that by using the chat box at the bottom of the screen. And at the end, our email addresses and telephone numbers will be given. So please feel free to email us or call us afterwards. In addition, there's going to be a recording of the webinar and also the slides will be available. So if you'd like copies of either of those, then please get in touch. So Becca, turning to the first question our clients are asking us at the moment. The furlough or coronavirus job retention scheme. This month, the rates of reclaim and calculations change. What are those rates of contributions?
The government contribution is 60% of wages up to the cap of £1,875, with the employer contribution being 20% of wages up to a cap of £625. The employer is still expected to pay the national insurance contributions and pension contributions for each employee. The employee will still receive 80% of wages up to £2,500 and the scheme ends on the 31st of October.
Thank you, Becca. One of the more tricky questions that we're seeing from clients at the present moment is in connection with staff returning to work after furlough, and some employers are having difficulty persuading some employees to come back. This is especially pertinent now that we're looking at an increase in the R rate and tightening of lockdowns in some areas of the country. So the question that we're being asked is, if we want an employee to come back to work and they do not want to come back, how do I deal with that?
So when clients ring with this question, the first thing I always say to them is have an open and honest conversation with that employee and find out what the root causes as to the reason as to why they don't want to come back to work. Is it because they've previously been shielded and they're anxious and they're a bit nervous about what the outside world now looks like? And explain what you as an employer have put in place to make them feel like they're coming into a safe working environment. So talk about your risk assessment that you've done and the actions that you've put into place. Have you got PPE, social distancing, and the expectations of that employee when they're coming back into the workplace, and that everybody will adhere to those guidelines going forward. The government advice at the moment is that if you can work from home, then you should work from home, and we're not taking anything away from that. So if you are open and you've got work for employees to do, and they can do that from home, then absolutely they stay at home and they do that. If you're in a sector where you can't work from home, the government have updated their guidelines, which I have popped a link on the screen as you can see, for each sector to say what the safe working environment looks like, what the precautions and things should be that are put into place. Having said all of that, and you've had that honest conversation, if you have that difficult employee who's just, they've got used to being at home, they don't want to come back to work, quite like sitting at home, it may be that you have to have a difficult conversation around, you are coming back to work, we are open, we've got work for you to do. And it may be that you need to go down a disciplinary route as to, we need to investigate and decide what it is that we're going to do with you, because they are your terms and conditions and you should be coming back to work.
Thank you very much, Becca. I think it's fair to say that if you are experiencing these difficulties with employees, every employee is different, their circumstances are different, but there are common themes that flow throughout the issues that you may be having with them, and those are the common issues that we often see. So if you need to use this as a sounding board just to test whether what you think is right, then please do get in touch with us, give us a ring, and we're more than happy to chat through how you should deal with these difficult situations. Now, another one of the difficult situations that comes up with fairly frequently is changes to terms and conditions. And it may be that you find that you don't have quite as much work on as you had before. You're not actually wanting to lay staff off, or you're not wanting to make people redundant. But there's just not quite enough work for everybody to be occupied full time. So changes to terms and conditions. And the question is, if I want to change an employee's hours, how do I go about doing that?
So firstly, I would always say to go back to your employees' contracts and what is in that contract. Is there a clause there to say that we can change your terms and conditions? If there is or if there isn't, there still needs to be a verbal and written agreement between you and the employee that they agree to that change, they agree to the working hours that you're going to give them, and they can turn up and do those hours as and when you require them to do. Again, it's about building up, it's that relationship you have with your employees and sitting down with them, even it can be over a cup of tea, and just say, this is where the business is going at the moment, this is what we need from you as our employee. And being honest and saying, for us to all be end up in a job for the business to carry on as it's going, these are the changes that are going to be need to be made. What do you think to that? This is the proposal that we have for you, and see what they say from there. It's about the agreement to the change between both that's good for the employee and the employer at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Becca. Unfortunately, some employers are looking at making redundancies at the present moment, or reducing payroll generally, and redundancy is one of the questions that we are usually asked first in connection with reducing payroll costs. So the question is a pretty basic one. How do we go about making people redundant?
So when clients ring and we're talking about redundancy, we always have first of all, we have a bit of a conversation on what the business looks like currently and what is it that you're wanting to do in the future. What do you want your business to look like in the future? Because ultimately that's the reason why you're making the redundancies in the first place. So we talk about that genuine redundancy reason and have you got one? So is the organisation closing? Are you relocating? Are you having to shut some sites or stores and not others? Or have you had a downturn in work due to the current situation? And from there, we talk about the employees that do that work in that location or in that department. And first of all, I always talk about the length of service that those employees have got. So firstly, have they got 2 years service? If they haven't got that 2 year service, it's a conversation around, unfortunately, there's nothing here for you to do. It's not working out, and we let them go that way. If they have 2 years service or more, that's when we look at the job that they actually do and the way that you want to structure your business going forward. We can look at selection pools and selection criteria, and this is where we get the most questions from employers. They're wanting to know, what is a selection pool? What criteria do I have to fit? And am I ticking all the boxes to make sure I'm getting this right? So firstly, we look at a selection pool and we talk about grouping those employees that all do the same job or they form the same role, they have the same skills that do that role. And we collect those together, and they're the pool from which we're going to pick the employees to be redundant. After that, we look at a selection criteria. So where I've talked about what the business looks like in the future, are the employees that are in that selection pool, do they have those skills that you want your business to have going forward? So it can be things like disciplinaries, absence, training, skills for the future that you want to develop your business into. Do the employees have those? And we score them accordingly and weight those scores against those criteria that we've originally chosen. One of the other questions that comes a lot from employers is, how quick can we get this done? How long is consultation periods? We deal with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses with a lot less than 20 employees who are being made redundant. So there's no real length of time in terms of consultation periods. They have the right to the one meeting where it's discussed the business for the future, why the reasons for this are necessary, the reasons that they've been selected for redundancy. For 20 to 99 redundancies for employees, which are made within 90 days in one workplace, there's at least a 30-day consultation period in which to hold those meetings for everybody to say what they need to say and to have some time to think about the decisions that are being made. And then if you're making 100 or more employees redundant within 90 days, it's a 45-day consultation period. Having talked about redundancy, we also talk about the other options that there are. So it may not be right that redundancy is the right thing for your business at this time. So we'll look at voluntary redundancy, and there are other options that we do discuss as well.
Thank you, Becca. I think that last point is an important point, because we do tend to get the first question is, I want to make somebody redundant, how do I go about it? But what we try to do as much as possible is then turn that round and say, right, what is it? What are you trying to achieve? Is it that you are trying to reduce your payroll? Is it that you're trying to ease out a particular or several particularly difficult employees, or ones who are underperforming? And there are different ways of dealing with that. Redundancy or compulsory redundancy might be one of the ways, but there are often other ways of dealing with those particular situations. And the way we work is we try to understand what your objective actually is, and then help you reach that objective. And it might not necessarily be a pure redundancy process. So again, it's talking to us understanding what your particular issues are within your particular business, and then we can fit a solution to that particular problem or objective. So there's a few other changes which are coming up, and again, clients have been asking us about what is coming up. One of the questions that we've had is, we've heard there is a change to GDPR, the lovely GDPR that everybody absolutely loves. So what is happening with GDPR, please, Becca?
So as the 31st of December fast approaches, we come to the end of the transition period coming out of Brexit. As of the 1st of January 2021, the data protection rules are changing. So if you're an SME who does business in the EU, then the chances are that when you receive personal data from the EU, you'll need to make sure that you've actioned everything you need to action, so data can still flow between you in the UK and your business or operatives in the EU. So you're also getting the information that you need from both sides. For an SME that doesn't necessarily trade in the EU and you're predominantly within the UK, data protection rules are pretty much still the same. And we'll go back to the Data Protection Act for the UK. If you have customers, an office or a branch in the EU, then both sides need to comply with the UK and EU data regulations. So the UK follow the UK Data Protection Act, and the EU are following the EU GDPR data protection regulations. And both need to be communicating with each other to understand what they are and to make sure you're adhering to all those regulations. On the back of that, what I would say for employers is the watch out is the immigration policy is also changed. So if you employ employees from the EU, then probably give us a ring or email us for a bit of a chat, because the immigration rules have changed and what it is that your criteria needs to be in order to employ those employees from the EU.
Thank you, Becca. I think GDPR and data protection is one of those areas that businesses generally groan about, their eyes glaze over, and it's another one of those red tape issues that we could completely do without. GDPR is an area that there's a lot of it. It is complex, and a lot of misinformation was peddled last year and the year before about GDPR. And although it does apply to businesses, there are areas of it that you can pay more attention to and areas of it that you can pay less attention to. Working your way through that can be particularly tricky. But as with the other questions, if you find that you are having GDPR issues, or you're just not sure about it, then please just give us a ring and we'll help you steer through it. The next question about the future is new funding schemes for young people called a Kickstarter scheme. How does that work, Becca?
So from the end of 2020, placement should be available for employees who are the age between 16 to 24 who either on universal credit or they're at risk of long-term unemployment. And that's a 6-month placement offered by the employer, where they will receive 25 hours a week for those 6 months, and the employer will receive 100% of the relevant minimum wage in that funding. Now, any organisation can apply to the government for this, but 30 job placements need to be available for these young workers. So if you're an SME on your own and you're thinking, great, this is something I want to get involved in, I want to develop, I want to bring young people back into my business, then you can join up with other employers in order to create those 30 job placements.
Okay, thanks very much. And linked to that really is the lifetime skills guarantee and the new job support scheme, which is replacing the furlough scheme. Could you just run us through, Becca, how both of those work, please?
So this detail that we've been given so far is just an outline of what each of those schemes look like, so I'll run through them separately. So the lifetime skills guarantee is for adults in England without A-levels from April 2021. They will be able to apply to a college for free on a specific course that are deemed valuable to employers, and they will be able to study for the length of that course and gain themselves a qualification. It's focused on job seekers who need the skills the most, and the tagline is developing the workforce for the future. So the courses that are going to be available haven't actually been released yet because of what is deemed to be valuable to employers. But as soon as we get that information, we're going to do another webinar on lifetime skills and of the job support scheme to give you that information. The job support scheme is from the 1st of November, and it's currently going to run for 6 months. And it's where the employee is reduced their hours to 1/3 of their current working hours, and they get paid as normal by the employer for that initial third. The government will then top up the second third of those initial hours with up to a cap, and then the employer is going to pay for the initial third. So the employer ends up paying 55% of the initial wages of that employee, with the government topping up for the rest of those wages. As I've previously said, the detail of what we've got of those so far is not great. So we're going to, once the details be released from the government and the extra guidance, we'll do a further webinar of more of that detail.
Thank you, Becca. We didn't have a slide on the new job support scheme, but thank you for the whistle-stop tour of it. I think with the slides that we send out, we can probably add a quick slide just with a summary of the job support scheme. It's certainly not as generous as the furlough scheme, and it's not going to support every business. And the calculations as to whether it is going to suit your business or not do need some careful thought. It might suit some, it might not suit others, but it's worth having a look at. So that's the end of the questions. We're going to have some more in future, I would think. On screen at the moment are our contact details. Please do send us an email or get in touch with us if you want slides there or a copy of the webinar. Again, as I said at the beginning, please get back in touch with us. Just like to thank you, Becca, for running us through those questions and the answers. So what I'm going to do now is just switch over to any questions from the participants, and we'll endeavour to answer those for you. Thank you.